My husband divorced me for having no ambition. 6 months later, my little hobby made me a millionaire, and he came crawling back. My husband told me I was wasting my life making candles in the garage. He said I had no drive, no ambition, and no future. He filed for divorce and moved in with his coworker the same week. What he did not know was that a major retailer had just offered me a deal that would change everything. This is the story of how my silly little hobby turned into a $1 million empire, and how the man who threw me away begged for a second chance he would never get. I need to start from the beginning so you understand just how far this whole thing went. My name is Clara, and for 12 years I was married to a man named Derek. We met in college when I was 20, and he was 22. Back then, Derek was charming and funny and full of big dreams. He wanted to climb the corporate ladder, make 6 figures by 30, and live the kind of life you see in magazines. I loved that energy about him. I really did. He had this way of talking about the future that made everything seem possible, like the world was just waiting for him to show up and take what was his. Me, I was different. I was never the type to chase a corner office or dream about profit margins. I studied art in college, worked part-time at a bookstore, and spent my free time making things with my hands. Pottery, painting, sewing, leatherworking. If it involved creating something from raw materials, I was interested. Derek used to say it was one of the things he found attractive about me. He called me his little artist, and said my creativity balanced out his corporate energy. He even bought me a pottery wheel for my 22nd birthday. Looking back, I think he liked having a wife who seemed artsy and interesting at dinner parties. I was part of his image. We got married at 24 and 26. Things were good at first. Derek got a decent job at a marketing firm, and I picked up freelance graphic design work from home. We bought a small house with a 2-car garage in a quiet neighborhood, and I turned half of the garage into my little workshop. That was where I started making candles. Now I know what you are thinking. Candles? Really? That is her big ambition? But hear me out, because this is not about pouring wax into jars and sticking a label on it. I became genuinely obsessed with the craft. I read books about fragrance chemistry. I studied different wax blends, beeswax versus soy versus coconut versus parasoy blends. I experimented with essential oils, learned about fragrance layering and how top notes and base notes interact over different burn times. I studied wick science, and yes, there is absolutely a science to wicks. The wrong wick in the wrong wax with the wrong fragrance load will give you tunneling, mushrooming, soot, or a candle that barely throws any scent at all. Getting it right takes hundreds of test burns. I filled notebooks with data, burn times, scent throw ratings, wax pool measurements. I was not making candles, I was engineering them. I spent 2 full years perfecting my formulas before I ever sold a single one. 2 years of testing, failing, adjusting, and testing again. My garage smelled incredible, and every surface was covered in wax drippings and glass jars. But I did not care. I was learning, and every batch got better. I started an Etsy shop when I was 28, just a small thing on the side. I called it Ember and Ivy and listed maybe 10 different scents. I designed the labels myself using my graphic design skills, watercolor-style botanicals on cream-colored paper. They looked beautiful. The first month I sold 4 candles. The second month, 11. By the end of the first year, I was selling about 50 candles a month and making around $2,000 on the side. Not life-changing money, but it felt amazing. People were buying something I made with my own hands, and they were coming back for more. They were leaving 5-star reviews saying my candles were the best they had ever smelled. One customer said my lavender and cedar candle literally changed her sleep quality. Another said she bought 6 of my vanilla and sandalwood candles and put them in every room of her house. That kind of feedback kept me going on days when I felt like maybe Derek was right about me. Derek, on the other hand, was not impressed. Not even a little bit. At first he was supportive, or at least he pretended to be. He would nod when I showed him my sales numbers and say, "That is nice, babe," without looking up from his phone. He helped me carry boxes to the post office a few times. But as the years went on and his career started taking off, his attitude shifted in ways that were impossible to ignore. He got promoted to senior account manager, then director. His salary hit 6 figures right around his 30th birthday, just like he planned. And suddenly, my little candle business was not cute anymore. It was embarrassing. He started making comments. Small ones at first, the kind you almost convince yourself are jokes. "You are still doing the candle thing? Or when are you going to get a real job?" Then they got sharper and harder to laugh off. He would come home from work events and say things like, "Everyone else's wives have careers. Do you know how it looks when I say mine makes candles in the garage?" He once introduced me to a colleague at a dinner party, and when the colleague asked what I did, Derek jumped in and said, "She does crafts." Not "she runs a small business." Not "she is an entrepreneur." "She does crafts." Like I was 6 years old making friendship bracelets at summer camp. That stung. It really did, but I kept going because I loved what I was doing, and honestly the business was growing whether Derek acknowledged it or not. By year 3, I was pulling in about $5,000 a month. I had a real website, a social media following of about 12,000 people, and repeat customers who bought every single new scent I released. I was doing custom orders for weddings, bridal showers, and corporate events. A luxury hotel in the next town over ordered 200 candles for their guest rooms. But to Derek, none of that mattered, because I was not wearing a blazer and sitting in a conference room next to him. He started comparing me to other people's wives openly. "Did you know Jenna got promoted to partner at her firm? She is making $150 a year." Or "Brad's wife just launched a consulting business. She already has 3 clients." Every conversation was a reminder that I was not enough, that what I was doing was not enough, that no matter how many candles I sold, or how much money I made, it would never count, because it was not the kind of success he respected. The real problems started when Derek got promoted to vice president at his firm. He was 34 making close to $200,000 a year, and his ego was through the roof. He started going out more, staying late at the office, attending networking events that he never invited me to. He bought new suits, got a membership at an expensive gym, and started talking about himself in the third person during phone calls. Derek does not settle for second best. I wish I was making that up. Our conversations became transactional. He would come home, ask what was for dinner, tell me about some deal he closed or some important person he met, and then disappear into his home office for the rest of the night. We stopped having date nights. We stopped talking about anything personal. I felt like a roommate he barely tolerated, and the loneliness was crushing. I tried to talk to him about it, multiple times. I suggested couples therapy. He laughed. Actually laughed, like I had told him a joke. He said, "We do not need therapy, Clara. We need you to grow up and do something with your life. I cannot carry this marriage and my career at the same time." That was the moment something cracked inside me. Not broke completely. Cracked, because I was still holding on, still hoping the man I married was in there somewhere, under all the ego and ambition. But that crack got wider every single day. Every dismissive comment, every rolled eye when I talked about my business, every time he forgot to ask about my day. The crack grew. Then I found out about Jessica. Jessica was a junior account executive at Derek's firm. 26 years old, fresh out of her MBA program, blonde highlights, always dressed like she was going to a photo shoot. And apparently she had been sleeping with my husband for 4 months. I found out because Derek left his iPad on the kitchen counter and a message popped up on the screen. It said, "Last night was incredible, cannot wait to see you again," followed by a heart emoji. My stomach dropped to the floor. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the iPad. I unlocked it. His password was his birthday because of course it was, and scrolled through the messages. Weeks of conversations, flirty texts, plans to meet at her apartment after late meetings, photos I wish I could unsee, and worst of all, conversations about me. Derek had told Jessica that I was dead weight, and that he was stuck with a woman who had zero ambition and zero interesting qualities. Jessica responded with laughing emojis and said, "You deserve someone who matches your energy, babe." I read every single message. Every one. And when I was done, I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not throw the iPad across the room, even though I wanted to. I sat down at the kitchen table, took a breath, and something inside me went very, very calm. It was like a switch flipped. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. Pure cold clarity. I was done. Completely done. But I did not confront him right away. Instead, I called a lawyer first thing the next morning. Her name was Patricia, and she was a shark in a silk blouse. 5'2", soft-spoken, and absolutely lethal in a courtroom. She told me to document everything, keep my mouth shut, and let her handle the legal side. She said the worst thing you can do right now is let emotion drive your decisions. Be strategic. I followed her advice to the letter. 2 weeks later, Derek came home and sat me down at the kitchen table. He had this rehearsed speech ready, probably practiced it in the mirror. He said our marriage was not working, that we had grown apart, and that he thought we should separate. He never mentioned Jessica. He framed it as a mutual thing, like we were both equally responsible for the failure. Then he said the line that I will never forget as long as I live. "Honestly, Clara, I need someone with ambition. Someone who wants more out of life than a garage full of candle wax. You are happy making candles and posting on Instagram, and I am building a real career. We are just on different paths. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, okay. That was it. Just okay. One word. He blinked, clearly expecting a fight. He had probably prepared counter-arguments for every possible objection. But I gave him nothing. I signed where Patricia told me to sign, and because we did not have kids and Derek wanted the divorce done fast so he could move on with Jessica without any guilt, the whole thing was finalized in about 3 months. He let me keep the house because he was already planning to move into a fancy condo downtown with his new girlfriend. He thought he was being generous. He thought he was doing me a favor. He had absolutely no idea that he was making the biggest mistake of his entire life. Here is the thing Derek did not know. While he was busy cheating on me and planning his dramatic exit, something monumental was happening with Ember and Ivy. About a month before I found those messages on his iPad, I had gotten an email that I read 3 times because I was convinced it was spam. It was from a buyer at a major home goods retail chain. I am not going to say the exact name, but think of the kind of store where people go to buy nice things for their homes. Upscale, trendy, nationwide locations in every major city. This buyer, a woman named Rachel, had discovered my candles through Instagram. She had ordered a few for herself, burned them in her office, and fallen in love with them. She showed them to her team, and they all agreed. These were some of the best candles they had ever experienced. She wanted to set up a meeting to discuss carrying Ember and Ivy products in their stores. I almost fell off my chair when I read that email. This was the kind of opportunity I had dreamed about in the quiet moments when I let myself dream big. But I was in the middle of my marriage falling apart, so I kept it quiet. I responded professionally, set up a meeting for the following month, and told absolutely no one. Not Derek, not my friends, not even my mom. I wanted to see if it was real before I let myself believe it. The meeting happened 2 weeks after Derek asked for the divorce. I drove to their corporate office in a nice dress I bought at a thrift store, with a box of my 12 best candles in the passenger seat, my laptop with a presentation I had stayed up until 3 in the morning perfecting, and my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. I walked into that conference room and I pitched my heart out. I told them about my process, my ingredients, my commitment to quality over quantity. I showed them my customer reviews, my social media engagement, my growth numbers, my repeat customer rate, which was 68%, nearly unheard of in the candle industry. Rachel and her team were more than impressed. They were excited. They kept passing the candles around the table, smelling them, commenting on the packaging, asking questions about my process. One executive said, "I have been doing this for 20 years, and I do not think I have ever smelled a candle this complex. This is perfume-level work." But they did not just want to carry a few candles on a back shelf somewhere. They wanted an exclusive line, 12 signature scents, designed specifically for their stores, with premium packaging and my branding front and center. They were talking about placement in over 300 locations nationwide, prime shelf space, marketing support, the whole package. And the number they offered for the initial order made my jaw hit the table. It was a deal worth $1.2 million for the first year alone, with options to expand if the line performed well, which Rachel said she was extremely confident it would. I drove home that day and sat in my garage workshop, surrounded by jars and wax and wicks and the faint smell of 100 different fragrances, and I cried. Not because I was sad, because for the first time in years, someone saw the value in what I was doing. Someone with power and influence and a massive platform looked at my work and said, "This is exceptional." And it was not my husband. It was a room full of strangers who judged my work on its merit, not on whether it fit their idea of what success was supposed to look like. Now I had a mountain of work ahead of me and not a lot of time to do it. The retail chain wanted the exclusive line ready in 4 months. That meant scaling up production by about 500%, designing new packaging that met their specifications, perfecting 12 new scents that were distinct enough to fill a full collection, and setting up a real manufacturing process that could produce thousands of candles a month consistently. I could not do it all from my garage anymore. The little workshop that had been my sanctuary for years was officially too small. So I took a deep breath, drained my savings account, took out a small business loan, and leased a commercial space on the east side of town. It was an old warehouse that used to be a printing shop, nothing fancy at all, but it had high ceilings, good ventilation, and enough square footage to set up a real production line. I hired 3 part-time employees to start, all women from my neighborhood who needed flexible work. Maria, who had been laid off from a factory job. Tamika, a single mom who needed hours that worked around her kids' school schedule. And June, a retired teacher who said she was bored and wanted to learn something new. I trained them myself, and they were incredible. dedicated, careful, and genuinely excited about what we were building. I bought professional equipment, industrial melters, precision thermometers, commercial-grade mixing stations, a heat tunnel for shrink wrapping. I set up proper workstations with quality control checkpoints. I created a training manual, a production schedule, and a quality assurance protocol that would make sure every single candle that left our facility was perfect. Because that was the promise. That was always the promise. Quality over everything. Those 4 months were the hardest and most rewarding of my entire life. I was working 16-hour days, sometimes 18. I was pouring candles, testing scents, approving packaging designs, handling vendor negotiations, managing payroll, and dealing with the 1,000 small crises that come with scaling a business from a hobby to a real operation. I lost 15 pounds, gained dark circles under my eyes that could be seen from space, and probably consumed enough coffee to power a small electrical grid. But every single day, I woke up at 5 in the morning, drove to the warehouse, and felt something I had not felt in years: purpose, excitement, joy. Meanwhile, Derek was living his best life with Jessica. They moved into a sleek condo with floor-to-ceiling windows downtown. They took trips to Miami and Napa Valley and Tulum. They posted everything on social media, every fancy restaurant, every sunset cocktail, every carefully staged photo of them looking happy and glamorous. He looked like a man who had shed dead weight and was finally free. She looked like a woman who had won the prize. And honestly, I did not care. Not even a little. I was too busy building something incredible to spend 1 second worrying about what Derek and his new girlfriend were eating for brunch. The candles launched in stores 5 months after my divorce was finalized. I went to the nearest location on launch day, walked through the sliding doors like any other customer, and made my way to the home fragrance section. And there they were, my candles, on the shelf, in a national retail chain. 12 beautiful jars with the Ember and Ivy logo, my watercolor botanical designs, and a little card that said handcrafted with intention. Right there between the fancy diffusers and the imported soaps, in a prime eye-level display. I stood in that aisle for 10 minutes. A store employee asked me if I needed help, and I said, "No, I am just looking." I was not just looking. I was trying not to fall apart in the middle of a retail store, because everything I had worked for, everything I had been told was silly and pointless and a waste of time, was real. It was tangible. I could reach out and touch it. The first week, they sold out in 47 locations. The second week, they sold out in over 100. The retail chain's internal newsletter called Ember and Ivy the surprise hit of the quarter. By the end of the first month, Rachel called me personally to say they needed to double their next order. My candles were their best-performing new product launch of the entire year, outperforming brands that had been on shelves for decades. The press picked it up fast. A lifestyle magazine did a feature on me with the headline, "From Garage to Glory: How One Woman Built a Candle Empire After Divorce." A morning news show invited me for a segment where I demonstrated my candle-making process and talked about the journey. My Instagram went from 12,000 followers to over 200,000 in 6 weeks, then 300,000, then 500,000. I was getting emails from other retailers who wanted to stock my products. Luxury hotels wanted custom scents for their lobbies and guest rooms. A high-end fragrance house reached out about collaborating on a perfume line. A venture capital firm asked if I was interested in outside investment. The money was unlike anything I had ever imagined, even in my wildest dreams. After the first year, Ember and Ivy generated over $3 million in revenue. I paid off my house in full. I paid off the business loan early. I bought a proper production facility, twice the size of the leased warehouse, and I owned it outright. I hired a team of 15 people. I had an accountant, a lawyer, a marketing manager, and a production director. My silly little hobby was now a real company with real employees, real impact, and real revenue that dwarfed Derek's precious corporate salary several times over. And then, Derek found out. He called me on a Tuesday evening, about 7 months after our divorce was finalized. I was at my new facility, reviewing scent samples for the next seasonal collection with Maria and June, when my phone rang and his name popped up on the screen. I almost did not answer. I stared at it for 3 rings, debating. But curiosity got the best of me. I told the team I would be right back and stepped into the hallway. "Clara?" His voice was weird, tight, controlled, like he was working very hard to sound casual while every cell in his body was screaming. "I just saw an article about you, about your candle company, on the news." "Oh, that," I said, leaning against the wall, using the same casual tone he used to use when I told him about my sales numbers. "Yeah, things have been going pretty well." "Pretty well?" He sounded almost offended. "Clara, The article said you signed a deal worth over $1 million with a national retailer. Is that true? It is. There was a long, painful silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, recalculating everything he thought he knew about me, about my ambition, about my worth, about the decision he made to throw me away. "Why did you not tell me?" he finally asked, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost like accusation, like I had tricked him by not revealing my success before he had the chance to leave. "We were getting divorced, Derek. It was not really your business anymore." Another long pause. Then he launched into it. The speech he had clearly been preparing since he saw the article. He said he thought we made a mistake, that he made a mistake, that he had been doing a lot of thinking, and realized he did not appreciate me the way he should have. That he was so focused on his own definition of success that he could not see what I was building right under his own roof. I let him talk. He went on for about 5 solid minutes without taking a breath. He said he missed me, that Jessica was not what he thought she would be, that he had been foolish and blind. He said he realized he threw away the best thing in his life. He actually used those exact words, "the best thing in my life." The same man who told Jessica I was dead weight with 0 interesting qualities. Then came the ask. He wanted to get dinner. Just to talk, he said. No pressure. No expectations. Just 2 people who used to love each other, having a conversation. I was quiet for a moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, waiting, hoping. And then I said something I had been carrying inside me for months, maybe years. "Derek, I need you to hear something, and I need you to really listen. When you told me I had no ambition, I believed you. I spent years thinking something was fundamentally wrong with me because I did not want the same things you wanted. You made me feel small. You made me feel worthless. Every comment, every eye roll, every time you compared me to someone else's wife, you chipped away a little piece of who I was. And then you cheated on me with a woman 10 years younger and left me like I was nothing. Like 12 years of marriage was an inconvenience you could not wait to be rid of." He started to interrupt, started to say, "Clara, but here is the thing you need to understand. You leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of the money, not because of the business deals or the magazine features or the followers, but because I finally got to be myself without someone constantly telling me I was not enough. I finally got to wake up in the morning and feel excited instead of ashamed. So no, Derek, we are not getting dinner. We are not getting back together. We are not having a conversation about second chances. And for the record, I had ambition the entire time, more than you ever had. You were just too arrogant and too busy chasing your own reflection to see it." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from nerves or from anger, from relief, from the sheer physical release of finally saying the things I had been holding in for years. I stood in that hallway for a full minute, breathing, feeling lighter than I had felt in a decade. He did not give up easily. Over the next few weeks, he sent flowers to my office. Expensive ones, the kind he never bought during our marriage. He left voicemails that got increasingly desperate. He even showed up at my production facility one afternoon, unannounced, wearing his best suit and holding a bottle of expensive wine, looking like a man auditioning for a part in a romantic movie. My warehouse manager, a no-nonsense woman named Diane, who had been a drill sergeant in the army before going into logistics, told him firmly that he was not welcome on the property and escorted him to his car. I gave Diane a raise and a bonus the next day. Then the messages took a different tone, and the real story started to emerge. Derek was not just trying to win me back because he missed me, or realized the error of his ways. He was trying to win me back because his own life was in freefall. Turns out, the same month my business exploded, Derek's career hit a massive wall. His company went through a major restructuring after losing 2 key accounts, and his department was one of the hardest hit. He did not get fired outright, but he got demoted, hard. His fancy VP title was gone, replaced with senior consultant, which was corporate speak for "we are paying you less money to do more work while we figure out whether to fire you or let you quit." His salary dropped from $200,000 to about $120,000, which sounds like plenty of money until you are living a $200,000 lifestyle with a condo lease and a car payment and a girlfriend who expects 5-star dinners 3 nights a week. And Jessica? Sweet ambitious matches your energy. Jessica? She dumped him about 3 weeks after the demotion. Turns out Jessica was not in love with Derek. She was in love with Vice President Derek. The corner office, the expense account, the invitations to exclusive events. The moment Derek stopped being the most powerful guy on the floor, she lost interest faster than a candle without a wick. She packed her things and moved out of the condo while he was at work. Left a note on the counter that said, "I think we want different things. No heart emojis that time. Derek moved out of the condo because he could not afford it alone and rented a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. Meanwhile, I was being invited to speak at women's business conferences. I was on the cover of a regional business magazine with the headline "Burning Bright, Clara's Candle Empire." I was negotiating a second retail partnership, this time with an international chain that would put Ember and Ivy candles in stores across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The second deal was worth $4.5 million over 2 years. Derek's mother, a sweet woman named Helen, who I always got along with, called me one afternoon. She said, "Clara, I know things ended badly between you and Derek, and I am not going to defend what he did, but he is in a really dark place right now. He lost his title, his girlfriend left, and I think he is depressed. Could you just talk to him, not get back together, just talk?" I felt a genuine pang of sympathy, because I am not heartless. I remembered the Derek I fell in love with in college, the funny, charming guy who used to bring me coffee while I painted, and tell me my art was beautiful. That Derek was in there somewhere, buried under years of ego and poor choices. But I also remembered every cutting comment, every rolled eye, every time he made me feel invisible in my own home. So I told Helen the truth. I hope Derek gets the help he needs. I genuinely do, but I cannot be the one to give it to him. He needs to figure out his own path, the same way I had to figure out mine after he left me with nothing but a garage full of candle wax and a broken heart. Helen was quiet for a moment, and then she said something that hit me right in the chest. "You know what, Clara? You are absolutely right, and for what it is worth, I am so proud of you. I always thought you were the best thing that ever happened to my son. He was just too stupid to see it." That meant more to me than she will ever know. The final chapter of this story happened about a year after the divorce. I was invited to a charity gala, a black tie event at a downtown hotel that raised money for arts education in underserved schools. The kind of event I never would have been invited to when I was just a candle maker in a garage. I was there as a featured entrepreneur, one of 3 women being honored for building successful businesses from the ground up. I wore a deep green velvet dress that I bought full price from a designer I had always loved but could never afford. My hair was done professionally. My confidence was sky high. And who did I run into at the event, working as part of the catering staff? Not Derek himself, but one of his old colleagues, a guy named Marcus, who used to come to our dinner parties and laugh the loudest at Derek's jokes about my candle obsession. Marcus used to say things like "still playing with wax" and high-five Derek like they were the funniest comedy duo on earth. Now Marcus was wearing a white shirt and black vest, carrying a tray of champagne flutes through the crowd. He nearly dropped the entire tray when he spotted me. "Clara," he said, eyes wide, "what are you doing here?" "I am one of the speakers tonight," I said, taking a glass of champagne from his tray with a smile. "How is everything with you, Marcus?" He stammered something about the catering company being a side gig while he was between jobs, and I could see it on his face. The realization, the recalculation. The understanding that the woman they all laughed about, the woman they dismissed as Derek's embarrassing hobby wife, was now standing in front of him in a designer dress, about to give a speech to a room full of the city's most successful people. I gave my speech that night about following your passion even when the people closest to you do not believe in it. I talked about the years of doubt, the dismissive comments, the feeling of being invisible in my own marriage. I talked about the night I sat alone in a garage, surrounded by candles that nobody seemed to care about, and almost gave up. And I talked about the morning I decided that the only opinion that truly mattered was my own. I did not name Derek, but anyone who knew our story would have understood every word. The audience gave me a standing ovation. 3 different people came up to me afterward with tears in their eyes and said my story inspired them to keep going with their own dreams. After the event, I drove home to my fully paid-off house. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, lit one of my own candles, the original lavender and cedar that started it all back in that little garage workshop, and sat in my living room in complete, beautiful, well-earned peace. Derek still sends me an email every now and then, usually around the holidays or when he sees another article about Ember and Ivy. They are always some version of "I was wrong about you, and I miss what we had, and I hope you know I am sorry." I never respond. Not out of cruelty, not out of bitterness, but because there is honestly nothing left to say. He made his choice. I made mine, and my choice led me to a life more extraordinary than anything I could have imagined when I was sitting in that garage, pouring wax into jars while my husband rolled his eyes in the next room. Ember and Ivy just celebrated its 4th year in business. We have over 50 employees, partnerships with retailers on 4 continents. A product line that includes candles, diffusers, room sprays, and a fragrance collaboration with a luxury perfume house that launched last spring and sold out in 72 hours. Our revenue last year was just under $12 million. My silly little hobby out-earns Derek's entire career multiple times over and employs more people than his old department ever did. But the best part is not the money. It never was, and it never will be. The best part is that I wake up every morning, walk into a space filled with beautiful scents and talented people who believe in what we are building, and I know that I created this. Not because someone believed in me, not because someone gave me permission or validation, but because I believed in myself, even when the person who was supposed to love me the most told me I was worthless. So if you are out there right now, being told that your passion is silly, that your dreams are too small, that you need to get serious and do something real with your life, let me tell you something from the bottom of my heart. The people who dismiss your spark are usually the ones who have lost their own. Keep going, keep creating, keep pouring yourself into the thing that makes you come alive, because one day, your little hobby might just change your whole world. And the person who doubted you, they will be watching from the outside, alone in a one-bedroom apartment, wondering where it all went wrong. But that is not your problem anymore. That is karma doing its thing. And karma, much like a good candle, burns slow and steady, but it always delivers.